Only a Northern Song isn't just one of George Harrison's odd psychedelic experiments. It's an inside joke, a protest, and a confession all rolled into one. Beneath its offbeat sound and strange humor lies a scathing message about artistic exploitation and quiet resentment. To most listeners, it sounds like a chaotic blur of mismatched notes and mocking brass. But for those who knew what was happening behind the Beatles' polished image, it was something else entirely. George's sarcastic middle finger to the machinery of fame that profited from his work while treating him as an afterthought. To understand the bite of this song, you have to go back to the late 1960s, when the Beatles were at their creative peak, but internally fractured. John and Paul dominated not only the band's public image, but also its publishing company, Northern Songs Limited, founded in 1963. The idea was to manage the band's songwriting royalties. But in practice, it meant that any song George wrote automatically fell under a company partially owned by John and Paul, and mostly controlled by business figures like Dick James. So every time one of George's songs played on the radio, his bandmates and their business partners got a larger share than he did. It was a system that rewarded the stars at the top while quietly draining the others beneath them. For someone as spiritually inclined and self-effacing as George, this was a deep, festering insult. Harrison was never one to throw tantrums or seek public sympathy. Instead, he channeled his frustrations into art, though in this case, he weaponized absurdity itself. Only a Northern Song was recorded during the sessions for Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band in early 1967, an era defined by wild experimentation, tape loops, and surrealism. But even in that psychedelic playground, George's track stood out for its deliberate dissonance. The organ droned lazily out of key, the trumpets squawked like a circus gone wrong, and the harmonies seemed to collapse on themselves. It sounded careless, even mocking. Yet every detail was intentional. The genius of Only a Northern Song lies in how it turns sloppiness into satire. Harrison created what could be called an anti-song, a composition that sounds bad on purpose because it's about the futility of caring in a system that doesn't value your effort. Every off note becomes a form of protest. Every ironic lyric becomes a weapon. When George sings, "If you think the harmony is a little dark and out of key, you're correct. There's nobody there." It's both a wink and a wound. He's admitting that he's checked out emotionally, that he's no longer pouring his soul into something that enriches others more than himself. It's the sound of apathy turned into art. That dry humor was typical of George. While John Lennon would attack injustice head-on, and Paul McCartney would wrap his emotions in melody, George preferred the subtle path. His rebellion was always quiet, laced with irony. Only a Northern Song is him laughing instead of shouting. He mocks the absurdity of the situation by giving the system exactly what it asked for, another song under Northern Songs, but stripped of sincerity. It's a form of passive resistance, delivered through sarcasm and psychedelic noise. Musically, the track fits the Sgt. Pepper era, but also undermines it. Where Paul was obsessing over sonic perfection, George was deliberately dismantling it. The mix is messy, the instrumentation abrasive, and the structure unstable. It's as if he's saying, if all you want is another Beatles song, then here's one that sounds like it barely holds together. It's not beautiful, it's bitter. But in that bitterness lies its brilliance. The irony deepens when you consider that this chaotic track was left off Sgt. Pepper, and later included in the animated film Yellow Submarine, 1968. That placement made it seem like a throwaway, a whimsical tune for a cartoon sequence. Yet even in that context, it worked as meta-commentary. George's song about exploitation literally used to sell a Beatles-branded movie. The system swallowed his protest and turned it into product. Somehow, that made the satire even sharper. George Harrison's relationship with the Beatles' internal politics was always complicated. As the youngest member, he spent years trying to find his footing among two dominant songwriters who often overshadowed him. By 1966, he had written gems like Taxman and If I Needed Someone, yet he still only got 1 or 2 songs per album. Meanwhile, the Lennon-McCartney brand was everywhere, their names stamped on every single release, including his own contributions through the Northern Songs deal. It wasn't just unfair, it was demeaning. George wasn't seeking fame. He wanted recognition. But in the Beatles' ecosystem, even sincerity had a price tag. Only a Northern Song marked the beginning of George's open disillusionment with the Beatles' business structure. It was the prelude to the more explicit spiritual and philosophical songs he would later write, like Within You Without You and Isn't It a Pity. Those later tracks expressed his longing for peace and transcendence. But this was pure sarcasm. A shot fired not at his bandmates personally, but at the corporate system that turned art into shares and souls into signatures. If his later work was prayer, this one was protest. Listen closely, and the production itself tells the story. The recording feels purposely uneven. The horns are out of sync. The organ drones relentlessly. The mix warps and bends like a bad trip that refuses to end. It's as though George took the idea of a Beatles song and stretched it until it broke. Yet beneath the parody lies control. He knew exactly what he was doing. Every wrong note is the right choice. The chaos is his message. This is what happens when creativity becomes a contract. When Yellow Submarine was released, casual fans dismissed only a Northern song as filler. But musicians and insiders understood the layers beneath it. They could hear the sarcasm hidden in the off-key chords. They could feel the exhaustion behind the joke. This wasn't laziness, it was rebellion in disguise. George had found a way to vent without breaking the band's public harmony. His quiet defiance was far more subversive than open anger. Decades later, the song stands as a precursor to how many artists would later challenge record label control and publishing contracts. In the 1960s, few dared to bite the hand that fed them, certainly not inside the biggest band on earth. But George did it with a smirk. He buried his protest under waves of sound and let history uncover it later. In doing so, he turned cynicism into art. There's something timeless about the sentiment behind Only a Northern Song. It speaks to every artist who's ever felt unseen or undervalued, to every creative mind trapped inside a corporate machine. George wasn't just complaining about money. He was lamenting how something pure, music, could be twisted into paperwork and percentages. His sarcasm becomes universal, a statement about the absurdity of creating beauty for people who only see numbers. By the time the Beatles broke up, George had grown far beyond that bitterness. He went on to release All Things Must Pass, an album overflowing with sincerity, faith, and love. But you can trace the roots of that freedom back to Only a Northern Song. Before he could transcend, he had to purge the frustration. Before he could write songs about God, he had to confront the greed. That's what makes this odd little track so powerful. It captures George at a crossroads, tired of being sidelined, aware of his worth, and ready to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Beneath the psychedelic haze, you can almost hear him smiling through the cynicism, saying, "Go ahead, take your cut. I've already made my point." It's not loud, it's not angry, but it's devastatingly clear. Only a Northern Song remains one of rock's most underrated acts of defiance. It's proof that rebellion doesn't always need volume. It can whisper, mock, and play out of tune. George Harrison didn't destroy the system. He exposed it, one dissonant chord at a time. And in doing so, he turned a song that was supposed to serve the machine into a timeless reminder that true art, even when wrapped in sarcasm, will always tell the truth.